Hey, what's up guys? It's Reed Young, aka Shooter here. I'm going to be going over a small stakes no limit hand posted by the People's Elbow, my favorite small stakes screen name. So if you guys check it out, we're playing six-handed. We're about 100 big blinds effective with pretty much everyone at the table fairly similar stack sizes. Let's see, we got a short stack in the small blind and a couple deeper guys. Half the table is around 100 big blinds. We raise to 3 big blinds in earlier position, and we get 3 callers. I guess none of those guys are in the blinds. So everyone has position on us, and we see a 9-4-5 flop with 2 hearts on it. And so first off, I think the first mistake, not a big one, is the continuation bet size on the flop. Multi-way and out of position, I think we can all agree that it's not, the greatest situation to just fire out a bluff like 80% of the time here. So what I think is a better alternative, than sizing your bet such that you get a better price on bluffs and things like that, is balancing a range made up of made hands and a few bluffs where you bet a bit larger, so you offer your opponents who, one of whom is going to have a marginal hand like pocket eights or something like that, and put him in a tough spot right away, especially multi-way. If, one of the players like middle position who calls their bet, if he has to worry about other people overcalling and things like that, pocket eights start to look a lot worse. But betting 8 here, if he's going to put us on a pretty wide range, hands like eights become pretty easy to play against us. So that's not what we want. We want to put people in difficult decisions, and we can make money that way from people guessing incorrectly one way or the other with some marginal parts of their range. I think that's really what poker is all about largely, and I think you do that a lot better by betting, something like 10 to 12 on this flop with a balanced range. So that said, we bet 8, not a huge deal, but we get 2 calls. I think it's extremely rare that the cutoff has a very strong hand here. Typically, it's going to be some sort of one pair hand or a straight draw. I think flush draws try to get in some money and squeeze out some one pair hands on the flop a lot of the time. Not to mention that we do block a lot of the Broadway flush draws. And if the nut flush draw is always raising the flop, which might not be the case, but I would say certainly more often than not, most players are going to be raising the nut flush draw in the cutoffs position on the flop, then his range is going to be pretty weak made hand heavy. What that means is we need to be value betting a little bit thinner on the turn, and I think we can squeeze the middle position player who is going to be put in some tough spots when he has to worry about the cutoff overcalling on a lot of turns. So this turn is actually like a perfect example. Again, the bet size is too small. It doesn't accomplish really anything as far as charging draws or putting people in tough decisions against that range. If people think we're just giving up with ace-jack on this turn always, if we try to widen our bluffing range by betting smaller on the flop, then betting small on this turn really only says like, hey, I have pocket tens or better a lot of the time here, and now you're not getting, or now you're getting better odds if you have a heart draw if you wanted them. So it doesn't really accomplish that much. I'd probably bet something closer to 30 here, given that the turn's 37.50. That would put a heart draw in a tougher spot, and certainly a straight draw. I think the middle position player in the cutoff are pretty unlikely to have a 5 in their hand. If they did, I think it's probably just mostly unlucky. And like we said, I don't expect really either player to have an extremely strong hand given how draw heavy this board is and that it's multi-way action. So probably pretty rare that middle position has a full house. It's certainly discounted a bit, I would say. At least half the combinations fast play, just to pull a number off the top of my head there. Certainly not something you can set in stone, but I think it's less likely that people are slow playing multi-way on draw heavy boards. It's probably something we can all agree on. So we bet again. I think it's a bit too small. Middle position calls again, and the cutoff folds, which given our flop read, we would expect him to do quite a bit of the time. I think he probably folded something like 9-8. So you could take that into account a little bit when we're thinking about the middle position player's range. But it's also pretty unlikely that a middle position caller, being the first of all the callers pre-flop and having to worry about getting squoze afterward, is going to have a lot of 9x or 5x hands in his range. So I'd say his most likely hand is going to be something like 8s or 10s still here. Maybe 7s, I guess. The river is a 7 of clubs, speaking of 7s, and now the pre-flop raiser, the poster of this hand, is like, hey, I'm in a tough spot, what do I do? Should I bet? Or he's asking, I guess, yeah, he's bet folding the turn is what he said. Okay, yeah, should I bet or check fold or try to bet fold here? Maybe you can make like an explosive bet and bet like 1/3 pot, something like that. I think this is a pretty clear bet given the straight draws missed for the most part. If you check a 7 here, it's almost never good. So I think if you do have a 7, it's not necessarily a hand where you're like, oh, never bluff with a 7 here. So all the straight draws missed. We don't really expect anyone to have 6-8. We have 6-8, but I don't think it's a big deal. And the flush draws miss. So we could check call this river, but I think, and especially at 100 no limit, this has to be much closer to a bet than a check call. You could check call if you assume people are going to be turning hands into a bluff some of the time. But if you think about the situation, there's really not much reason for someone to turn a hand into a bluff because there probably aren't that many combinations that they're folding. So if someone even checked a hand as weak as pocket 10s in our position, it's probably with the intention of picking off a flush draw a lot of the time. So they're not really check folding even the next best hands to whatever hand someone would be turning into a bluff. Say they had something like pocket 6s on this river. Even like ace queen of hearts has a decent amount of showdown value, and I'm not really sure if you could justify bluffing with it or not. It depends on your player certainly, and how balanced their river checking range is going to be. But I think kings is just so strong, and then also we have a king of hearts in our hand, which isn't negligible because it blocks a lot of the flush draws that our opponent could be double floating us with. So if he would have had something like king queen of hearts, king jack of hearts, maybe even the occasional ace king of hearts, I think those make up a lot of his bluffing range when checked to. So that makes a check call even less attractive because we really, I think the bulk of the time we're just going to see the river go check check if we check, and we're going to beat a worse hand like pocket 8s. So then I guess the obvious question that I hear all the time is like, okay, well, if someone bet into me here and I had pocket 8s, I would just fold, so why am I betting pocket kings here? Well, I think the answer to that situation is that it just means you're not bluffing often enough. If you're getting people to fold a pair here every single time, then you should be bluffing a lot more often and exploiting that. It could be tough to do multi-way, but I think it just means you could continue with basically every draw that you had on the turn that had some equity that you decided to semi-bluff with twice. So if you had like 6-7, I would probably bluff with it given those reads. Any heart draw, I would probably bluff with it. Maybe some of the time you continuation bet a hand like ace queen of spades and just decided to get crazy on this turn. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I think it illustrates some good concepts. Again, thin value bets should be coupled with bluffs, and if you're worried about getting thin value, you just need to add some bluffs to your range, and that's going to take care of that. Either way, you're going to be making money. They're going to be folding too often to your bluffs or calling too often if you have thin value. So the name of the game is just creating a balanced range. All right, take care, guys.